From a screenwriter who returned a birthday blouse to celebrate a $1 million deal to Clint Eastwood receiving Hollywood's first-ever digital haircut, In the Line of Fire conceals fascinating secrets behind its tense cat-and-mouse thriller facade. This 1993 political thriller starring Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich hides bizarre production stories, improvised moments that made Eastwood laugh on camera, and eerie connections to real Secret Service history. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about In the Line of Fire. Fact 1. The script sold for $1.4 million, while the writer was nearly homeless. Jeff McGuire spent over 10 years trying to sell his script for In the Line of Fire, and by 1992, his financial situation had become desperate. The struggling screenwriter was drowning in credit card debt, behind on rent, and his phone service was about to be disconnected because he couldn't pay the bill. After a decade of rejection and near misses with various producers and studios, McGuire and his wife were ready to give up on Hollywood completely and move to New Hampshire for a quieter life away from the entertainment industry. Then everything changed in a single phone call. Rob Reiner's Castle Rock Entertainment had just purchased his script for $1.4 million after an intense bidding war between major studios and stars, including Tom Cruise, Sean Connery, and Clint Eastwood. When McGuire received the call from Eastwood congratulating him on the completed deal, he and his wife faced an immediate problem. They had no money to celebrate one of the biggest moments of their lives. His wife had recently received a blouse as a birthday present, so they returned it to the store that same day just to get enough cash to go out for dinner and toast to their incredible good fortune. The hard work and patience had finally paid off, as less than a year after nearly abandoning the Hollywood dream entirely, McGuire earned an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. That returned birthday blouse became a symbol of just how close he came to giving up right before his big break arrived. Fact 2. Dustin Hoffman added the JFK subplot, then disappeared. The JFK assassination subplot that became the emotional heart of In the Line of Fire almost didn't exist in the original script. When the project was bouncing around Hollywood in the mid-1980s, Dustin Hoffman became attached to star in the film and worked closely with the writers during development. Hoffman made a crucial creative suggestion that would fundamentally change the story. He proposed that the main character should be haunted by his failure to protect President Kennedy in Dallas. This brilliant addition gave the Secret Service agent a powerful psychological motivation and a deep sense of guilt that elevated the entire narrative beyond a standard action thriller. The JFK connection added historical weight and personal stakes that made audiences care deeply about whether this aging agent would get a second chance at redemption. However, shortly after contributing this essential story element, Hoffman left the project due to conflicts with Columbia Pictures chairman David Putnam, with whom he reportedly had bad blood. The movie then spent several more years in development limbo, passing through different studios and potential stars, including Robert Redford, Sean Connery, James Caan, Tommy Lee Jones, and Val Kilmer. By the time Clint Eastwood finally came on board and the film went into production in the early 1990s, Hoffman had long since moved on to other projects. Despite his departure, Hoffman's suggestion about the Kennedy assassination remained the cornerstone of the screenplay, shaping Frank Horrigan into a complex, damaged character rather than just another action hero. Fact 3. Malkovich improvised the creepy gun-and-mouth scene. One of the most unsettling and memorable moments in the Line of Fire happened completely by accident during filming. In the rooftop chase sequence, Clint Eastwood's character Frank Horrigan catches up with the assassin Mitch Leary and ends up dangling from the edge of a building, saved only when Leary pulls him to safety. Horrigan then points his gun directly at Leary's face, creating a tense standoff between the two characters. Director Wolfgang Peterson had told John Malkovich to do something weird and unexpected in this moment, but he never specified exactly what that should be. Without any warning to Eastwood or the crew, Malkovich suddenly wrapped his mouth around the barrel of the gun, creating a disturbingly intimate and psychologically complex gesture that perfectly captured his character's twisted nature. The improvised action was so unexpected and bizarre that Clint Eastwood, who was famously professional and rarely broke character, started laughing off camera. If you watch the scene closely, you can actually see Malkovich smiling while the gun is in his mouth, which was his genuine reaction to hearing Eastwood crack up just out of frame. Pedersen loved the improvised moment so much that he kept it in the final film, recognizing that Malkovich had created something far more memorable and disturbing than anything in the script. Malkovich later explained his thinking, saying he liked the gesture because it was simultaneously mocking and somewhat sexual, adding layers of psychological complexity to the cat-and-mouse relationship between the two characters. Fact 4. Clint Eastwood received the world's first digital haircut, creating a believable backstory for Clint Eastwood's character. Frank Horrigan required solving a major technical challenge: how to show a 63-year-old actor as a young Secret Service agent in 1963. The filmmakers needed to place Eastwood's character at the Kennedy assassination in Dallas, which was crucial to establishing his guilt and motivation. But the 30-year time difference made this seem impossible with traditional filmmaking techniques. The visual effects team came up with an innovative solution that had never been attempted before in cinema history. They took footage of a young Clint Eastwood from the original Dirty Harry film, which had been shot in the early 1970s, and digitally inserted his face into authentic archival footage of the Kennedy motorcade. The process required cutting-edge digital manipulation to seamlessly blend the old movie footage with the historical documentary footage, adjusting lighting, color, and perspective to make it appear that Eastwood had actually been there in Dallas. Producer Jeff Apple described this groundbreaking achievement to the Los Angeles Times by saying Eastwood received the world's first digital haircut, referring to how they digitally altered his appearance to match the early 1960s Secret Service look. The same revolutionary digital effects techniques were also used to insert Eastwood into contemporary campaign rally footage with George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, saving millions of dollars that would have been spent hiring thousands of extras for crowd scenes. This pioneering work represented roughly 10% of the film's entire $40 million budget, but it created authenticity that traditional methods could never achieve. Fact 5. Robert De Niro was first choice for the villain. John Malkovich delivered such an iconic performance as the psychotic assassin Mitch Leary that it's hard to imagine anyone else in the role, but he wasn't the first choice to play the villain. After Clint Eastwood signed on to star and Wolfgang Petersen came aboard to direct, they immediately approached Robert De Niro to play the cat-and-mouse game opposite Eastwood. De Niro had just come off a string of intense, memorable villain roles and seemed like the perfect match for the cerebral, disturbing character of Leary. However, De Niro had to turn down the role due to scheduling conflicts with A Bronx Tale, which would mark his directorial debut. The film had been a passion project for De Niro, and he chose to prioritize directing his first movie over taking another acting job, even one as prestigious as working with Clint Eastwood and Wolfgang Petersen. After De Niro passed, several other major actors were reportedly considered for the part, including Jack Nicholson and Robert Duvall, both of whom could have brought very different energy to the character. Some reports even suggest that Vincent D'Onofrio was originally cast as Leary before John Malkovich ultimately took over the role. When Malkovich finally came on board, he brought his own distinctive interpretation to the character, playing Leary as cold, intelligent, and unnervingly calm, rather than explosively violent. His performance earned him Academy Award, Golden Globe, and BAFTA nominations for Best Supporting Actor, validating the casting choice and making audiences forget that De Niro had ever been considered. Fact 6. Malkovich isolated himself for a month to prepare. John Malkovich took method acting to an extreme level to prepare for his role as the isolated, mentally unstable assassin Mitch Leary. Understanding that his character was a former CIA operative who had been abandoned by his government and left to spiral into paranoia and rage, Malkovich decided he needed to experience genuine isolation to authentically portray that psychological state. For more than a month before filming began, the actor imposed strict rules on himself that essentially cut him off from normal human contact in daily life. He refused to leave his house for any reason, wouldn't answer phone calls from friends or family, and avoided most forms of entertainment that would connect him to the outside world. The only exception to his media blackout was watching news programs, which he felt his character would do obsessively to track potential targets and understand the political landscape. This self-imposed solitary confinement allowed Malkovich to genuinely connect with the profound sense of alienation and detachment that defined Mitch Leary's fractured psychology. By experiencing real loneliness and disconnection from society, even in a controlled way, Malkovich could tap into the darker emotional spaces his character inhabited. The dedication paid off in his performance, which feels genuinely unsettling and detached, rather than like an actor simply playing crazy. Director Wolfgang Petersen and the other cast members noticed the difference in Malkovich's demeanor when he finally arrived on set, noting that he brought an authentic coldness and removed to the character that came from genuinely experiencing isolation, rather than just imagining it. Fact 7. The writer rejected Tom Cruise's $100,000 offer. Jeff Maguire's financial desperation reached a critical point when Imagine Entertainment, run by Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, expressed serious interest in buying his script. The company was willing to pay approximately $100,000 for the rights, which would have solved all of Maguire's immediate financial problems and saved him from bankruptcy. However, there was one major condition attached to the deal. Maguire would have to completely rewrite the lead character to accommodate a much younger actor. Imagine wanted to cast Tom Cruise, who was in his late 20s at the time and one of the biggest movie stars in the world. The problem was that casting such a young actor would require removing the entire JFK assassination subplot, which was the emotional foundation of the story. A 28-year-old Secret Service agent couldn't have been present in Dallas in 1963, so all of Frank Horrigan's guilt, trauma, and motivation for redemption would have to be eliminated or replaced with something else entirely. Despite being flat broke, behind on rent, and facing disconnected utilities, Maguire refused to make the changes. The JFK connection had become so central to his vision of the story that he considered removing it a betrayal of what made the script special in the first place. Turning down $100,000 when you're nearly homeless took extraordinary courage and conviction, but Maguire believed the integrity of the story was more important than immediate financial relief. His gamble paid off when Castle Rock Entertainment bought the script for over $1 million without demanding any changes to the core story. Fact 8. 62-year-old Eastwood hung 6 stories up for real. Clint Eastwood had built his career on playing tough, fearless characters, but at 62 years old during the filming of In the Line of Fire, most actors would have relied heavily on stunt doubles for dangerous action sequences. The rooftop chase scene required Frank Horrigan to dangle from a building ledge 6 stories above an alley, creating genuine suspense about whether he would fall to his death. Director Wolfgang Petersen naturally assumed they would use stunt performers and clever camera angles to create the illusion of danger while keeping Eastwood safe on the ground. To Petersen's complete surprise, Eastwood volunteered to perform the entire stunt himself, insisting that he could do it safely with proper precautions. The production team rigged a safety harness and embedded a wire into the wall that would catch Eastwood if he slipped, but there were no safety precautions set up in the alley below. If the harness failed or the wire pulled out of the wall, Eastwood would have fallen 6 stories onto concrete. Most directors would have refused to allow their star to take such a risk, but Petersen trusted Eastwood's judgment and allowed him to do the scene. The commitment to realism paid off, as the footage shows genuine tension and physical strain on Eastwood's face that a stunt double couldn't have provided. While stunt performers did handle the initial rooftop jump and the later fall onto the fire escape, Eastwood personally performed the hanging sequence. The visible harness and carabiner can actually be spotted in a few frames if you watch closely, but most audiences never notice because they're too focused on Eastwood's intense performance. Fact 9. The plastic gun was cut into pieces. After filming, the composite pistol that John Malkovich's character Mitch Leary builds throughout the film became one of the movie's most memorable props and a crucial plot device. The weapon was designed to be assembled from plastic-like composite materials that could evade metal detectors, allowing the assassin to smuggle it into a presidential event. To make the scenes look realistic, the prop department actually created two versions of the gun: a non-firing prop used for close-up assembly scenes and a slightly different model with reinforcements and functional components that could actually fire blank rounds during action sequences. The firing version had real mechanisms, including a working hinge pin and functional triggers that allowed it to discharge blanks on camera, creating authentic muzzle flashes and recoil that made the weapon feel genuinely dangerous. However, creating a functional firearm, even one that only fired blanks, meant the production was subject to strict regulations from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. After filming wrapped, federal regulations required that the functional prop weapon be permanently disabled to prevent it from ever being used as a real weapon. Rather than simply removing the firing mechanism, the ATF mandated that the prop be cut into 3 separate pieces, completely destroying its functionality and ensuring it could never be reassembled. The non-firing assembly prop survived intact and has since appeared in other productions, including the 1995 film No Way Back, starring Russell Crowe, while various replica versions have been sold at Hollywood memorabilia auctions over the years. Fact 10. This was the Secret Service's first Hollywood collaboration before. In the line of fire, the United States Secret Service had maintained a strict policy of refusing to cooperate with Hollywood productions about their work. The agency had turned down contemporary films, including Dave and Guarding Tess, which they dismissed as too whimsical and unrealistic to warrant their involvement. When director Wolfgang Peterson and producer Jeff Apple approached the Secret Service about In the Line of Fire, agency officials were initially skeptical about participating. However, what changed their minds was the filmmakers' genuine commitment to authenticity and their willingness to portray Secret Service agents as flawed human beings rather than superhuman heroes. As Peterson explained to the Los Angeles Times, the Secret Service didn't want the film to be a propaganda piece or recruitment commercial like Top Gun had been for the Navy. They wanted Hollywood to show the real pressures, moral complexities, and human limitations that agents face when protecting the president. The agency recognized that Clint Eastwood's character, Frank Horrigan, was deeply flawed, haunted by past failures, and sometimes made poor decisions, while John Malkovich's character made legitimate criticisms about how the government uses and discards trained operatives. Despite these unflattering elements, the Secret Service concluded that the overall portrayal was fair and accurate enough to merit their full cooperation. They provided technical advisors who spent months on set, gave the production access to film at real campaign events with George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and helped ensure that everything from radio protocols to protective formations looked authentic. The collaboration was deemed so successful that the agency hoped it would improve their public image and help with recruitment. Fact 11. President Bill Clinton praised the film, but they didn't use his quote as president during the film's release in 1993. Bill Clinton had a professional interest in movies about Secret Service protection, especially given the realistic threats presidents face. Clinton watched In the Line of Fire and enjoyed it so much that he praised the film publicly during an interview with Larry King on CNN. The president told King that he thought Clint Eastwood was terrific in the role and that he liked the movie very much, adding that he believed it was as realistic as it could be, while still functioning as a rip-roaring thriller. For most movies, having the sitting president of the United States publicly endorse your film would be a marketing dream come true. Movie studios typically jump at the chance to plaster presidential praise across their advertising materials, as it provides both legitimacy and generates enormous publicity. However, director Wolfgang Peterson faced an unusual dilemma when Clinton's comments became public. He genuinely wasn't sure whether having the president's endorsement would help or hurt the film's box office performance. Some moviegoers might be attracted by Clinton's approval, seeing it as validation of the film's quality and authenticity, while others might be turned off by what could be perceived as political interference or government propaganda. After considerable deliberation, Peterson made the surprising decision not to use Clinton's glowing review in any of the film's marketing materials, advertisements, or promotional campaigns. The movie ended up performing extremely well without the presidential seal of approval, earning over $187 million worldwide and becoming the 7th highest-grossing film of 1993. Fact 12 UK version censored the neck-breaking murders. The British Board of Film Classification has historically been stricter about violence in films compared to American rating systems, and in The Line of Fire presented particular challenges for UK censors. In one disturbing scene, John Malkovich's character, Mitch Leary, brutally murders a bank clerk and her roommate by breaking their necks, demonstrating both his lethal training and his complete lack of empathy for human life. The original cut of the scene showed the physical act of Leary breaking each victim's neck in graphic detail, with clear shots of him twisting their heads violently and the immediate aftermath of the murders. British censors determined that this level of violence was too intense for theatrical release in the United Kingdom and required cuts before the film could be distributed. The UK theatrical version removed approximately 8 seconds of footage that showed the actual neck breaking in explicit detail, though the scene remained in the film, with the violence happening mostly off-screen or implied. When the film was released on home video in the UK, censors required even stricter cuts, removing roughly 10 seconds of violent content to make the scene less graphic for the home viewing market. The edited versions still conveyed that Leary killed both women, but audiences no longer saw the detailed mechanics of how he murdered them. Interestingly, the scene originally included the bank clerk's dog, which Malkovich had suggested his character should also kill to demonstrate his complete ruthlessness. Director Wolfgang Peterson rejected that idea as going too far, and UK censors likely would have demanded even more extensive cuts if animal violence had been included in the scene. Fact 13. The film was one of the first with an online trailer. In 1993, the internet was still in its infancy for most consumers, and the idea of watching movie trailers online was almost unheard of. Most people accessed the internet through dial-up connections, if they had access at all, and streaming video technology barely existed. Columbia Pictures and Castle Rock Entertainment decided to take a pioneering step with In the Line of Fire by making it one of the very first films to release a trailer online. The trailer was made available through America Online, which was the dominant internet service provider at the time, offering subscribers a chance to download the preview and watch it on their computers. The file was downloaded exactly 170 times during the first week and a half of availability, a number that seems laughably small by modern standards. Today, a major Clint Eastwood film trailer would receive millions of views within hours of being posted online, with popular trailers sometimes reaching hundreds of millions of views before the film even opens in theaters. However, in the context of 1993 internet technology, 170 downloads represented a significant achievement and demonstrated real interest in this new distribution method. The file size would have been enormous by dial-up standards, possibly taking 30 minutes or longer to download depending on connection speed, so anyone who downloaded it was demonstrating serious commitment to seeing the preview. This early experiment in online film marketing paved the way for the now standard practice of releasing trailers simultaneously across multiple digital platforms, fundamentally changing how studios promote their movies and how audiences discover new films. Fact 14. Malkovich wanted to kill the dog. 2. John Malkovich fully committed to playing Mitch Leary as a completely remorseless psychopath who felt no empathy for human life, and he wanted to push the character's cruelty even further during the bank clerk murder scene. In the sequence as written, Leary coldly kills both the bank clerk and her roommate when they inadvertently discover his identity, demonstrating his willingness to murder innocent people to protect his assassination plan. However, the scene also featured the bank clerk's dog, which was present in the apartment during the murders. During discussions about how to play the scene, Malkovich suggested that his character should also kill the dog, arguing that a truly cold-blooded assassin wouldn't leave any witnesses alive, even animal ones. He felt that murdering the dog would underscore just how thoroughly damaged and inhuman Leary had become after his experiences as a government-trained killer. The suggestion created an immediate problem for director Wolfgang Petersen, who recognized that audiences have very different emotional reactions to animal deaths compared to human deaths in movies. While viewers might understand the narrative necessity of Leary killing the two women to maintain his cover, watching him kill a defenseless dog would likely turn audiences against the film itself rather than just the character. Petersen diplomatically rejected Malkovich's idea, telling him that killing the dog was a little too much even for a movie about a psychotic assassin. The dog survived the scene, though viewers can spot it in the background during the murders, adding an element of innocence and helplessness that makes the human deaths even more disturbing by contrast. Fact 15. 10% of the budget went to digital effects. In the Line of Fire had a production budget of approximately $40 million, which was substantial for an action thriller in the early 1990s, but not enormous by Hollywood standards. Surprisingly, the filmmakers allocated roughly $4 million of that budget specifically to digital visual effects, representing 10% of the total cost. This was an unusually high percentage for a film that wasn't science fiction or fantasy, but the effects were absolutely essential to making the story work. The most expensive and technically challenging effect was digitally inserting Clint Eastwood into archival footage of the Kennedy assassination in Dallas. The visual effects team at R/Greenberg Associates West had to take footage of a young Eastwood from Dirty Harry and seamlessly blend it with documentary footage from November 1963, adjusting everything from lighting and grain to color temperature and depth of field to create a convincing illusion. The same groundbreaking digital techniques were also used to place Eastwood into contemporary footage from the 1992 presidential campaign, showing him protecting candidates at rallies with George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. This clever cost-saving measure allowed the production to create scenes with thousands of people without hiring extras or staging massive crowd sequences. The filmmakers also digitally replaced the faces of real Secret Service agents in various shots with Eastwood's face, creating a complete fictional history for his character. These pioneering visual effects represented some of the most sophisticated digital manipulation attempted in cinema up to that point and helped establish techniques that would become standard practice in filmmaking over the following decades.